Morsels of Wisdom. And today, I'm very excited that we are going to be talking about how to turn overwhelmed into purposely productive. And before we jump right in, I just want to say, every month you guys have been joining me. Thank you. You have the opportunity to learn some amazing leadership lessons from both me and my outstanding lineup of guest speakers. And just a little FYI, because I like to just be real, I had my second COVID shot yesterday. So I had a little trouble getting out of bed, and I'm really excited that I'm actually sitting in front of you, but I'm probably not on my A game as I normally am. So I'm just sharing with you guys. And you know what? That's okay. Sometimes we have to show up, and we're not always going to be completely 1,000% in, but I'm here. And so that's the important thing. And Don is here. So before we jump right in, I just want to take a quick moment to introduce myself. I'm Joanne Newborn, certified lifestyle and leadership coach with Newborn Evolution. And I have found throughout my career, which is over 15 years in the corporate world, that there's a real lack of leadership. And we tend to look at other people for leadership. We don't think about it coming from ourselves. And I was introduced to this whole concept of leadership and the importance of it when I was getting my MBA at Penn State, which I got later on in life, and I'm glad I waited to do that. And so today I help career-focused individuals who feel frustrated and stressed out and unfulfilled, so they can create that leadership mindset so that they can get their dream job with an ideal salary and a luxurious, and I like to say guilt-free, work-life balance. So that's me. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Don Khouri and interviewing Don Khouri, PhD. He's a speaker, author, and executive coach with a proven track record of coaching leaders and high potential employees to attain maximum productivity, strengthen their communication and relationships, and motivate and inspire teams. He holds a PhD in human organizational systems and a certificate in executive coaching. Don is also the managing director of Fortune Management Northeast, which is the country's leading and largest executive coaching firm for dentists. And if you guys know me, I am also an executive coach with Fortune Management. Before that, Don served Fidelity Investments for 21 years in various leadership positions. He was actually influential in the steering committee member of Fidelity Investments Technology Mentoring Program, which paired over 500 technology associates interested in personal development with their senior leaders. And Don has so many certifications, it amazes me. So I just had to name them because it's amazing. He's a certified Myers-Briggs type indicator administrator. He's a certified professional behavioral analyst in DISC profiles. He's a certified in getting things done internal trainer and a certified linkage leadership coach. So after our interview, we will sign off of Facebook and we will go into our VIP Q&A and hot seat coaching session in the Opry Dolce in the Leadership Lounge. And that's for our VIP ticket holders who are here on Zoom with me. If you missed out this time, don't worry, you can always get your VIP ticket for next month. I also have to say that I had a little issue with Facebook, so I'm on my business page. And normally I would be in the vortex. So I hope that doesn't mess too many things up for people. So, that was a mouthful. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Joanne. And I'll just share a couple of quick things. That first of all, I share your passion for leadership because I do think we lack leadership out in the corporate world and in the world in general. So the more we can bring a light on that and help people be better leaders, I just, for me, I think it's in me. I believe leaders are made, by the way, not born, but I just always seek it out. I like leadership. And the other thing, if you're not on your A game today, I think that's probably still better than 90% of the population. So I'm still looking forward to an outstanding hour with you.
Thank you. So I'm curious, what is the reason why to-do lists don't work? Because I'm a big to-do list person. I have them on my computer, I have them handwritten, I have them on my phone. So I'd love to know why they don't work.
Yeah, it's one of the things I talk about. So you must have picked that up from me somewhere along the way. And what to-do lists tend to do, and this is an absolute, but in a lot of cases, what they tend to do is they capture an idea that we have that may or may not be actionable. And we end up with this whole pile of ideas or items or just stuff that have varying priorities, varying urgencies, varying importance that we don't really know where to focus. So I kind of boil this down to really 4 issues with to-do lists. One is they don't really tell us what to do next. It's really just a flat list, usually. Secondly, they include items that really can't even be completed. At one point, maybe on my list somewhere was write a book. Well, you can't just write a book. You don't just sit down and write a book. You need to first learn a process, and you need to understand how to publish it. And there's a whole series of things, series of actions ultimately that you need to take to write a book. So also, the items that we put on our list aren't necessarily actionable. So, for example, we'll use the book thing again. So if I just write book on my list, what does that really mean? Am I going to buy a book or read a book or write a book or, use a book to support my microphone? What is it that we're going to do with book, right? So we just want it to be really actionable. So, and then the last thing the last reason I think to-do lists don't really work is they're not usually prioritized.
Okay.
And priority is really one of the most important things when you're working on a list. It all needs to come back to priority. So those are some of the reasons. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have lists. I'm just saying we need to make our to-do lists more actionable.
Okay. So what is a good way to make them more actionable?
Exactly that, right? Use action verbs.
Okay.
So I'll give you another, we'll get away from the book example. So if I have Bob on my list, maybe there's just Bob. Well, am I going to call Bob or email Bob or set up a meeting? What actually is the action? So if you can just always think about whatever's on your list, make it actionable, have an action-oriented verb to drive what you're doing. So that's how I would make them actionable.
I'll also really quickly, I am also following the Newborn Evolution Facebook page. So if people are out there and watching and have questions, feel free to put them in the comments there, because I will let Don know what your questions are as we go along. That's why you see me looking up. I'm multitasking, which takes me to my next question for you. We see people talking a lot and touting their ability to multitask, and they're really proud of that. So how important is this skill in today's really fast-paced environment?
It's not important at all, actually, because what we're not really multitasking. What we're actually doing is fast task switching.
Okay.
So think about how a computer works, for example. The term multitasking actually comes from the world of computing. So the central processing unit, or CPU, if you know the acronym, that's responsible for every request a user makes on the keyboard, from the stroke of a key to complex calculations to intense gaming. The CPU is responsible for all of it. And when the CPU ends up spending more time switching between tasks than processing tasks, then it thrashes. And what thrashing means is it's just going to degrade performance, or ultimately the computer's going to crash. And the same thing is happening with all of us as people that work with information and work with knowledge. Is we're confronted with this excessive volume of requests for our time that our ability to stay focused is just jeopardized.
Yeah, I find myself doing that a lot. I have like 4 emails, email places open, and all day long I click 1, 2, 3, 4. I go through them. What's come in? What do I have to do? And constantly changing hats and switching my focus. And sometimes I feel like I'm not really getting anything done. So how can leaders keep up with all of these requests for their time?
Well, let's actually talk about that email situation for a minute, because I'm actually trying to change the vernacular of email so that instead of saying check email, because what do we do when we check email? We go, we look at it, we see how complex it is. We hit escape and we say, all right, I'm going to move on to the next one. I don't have time for that now.
Yep.
And this is how people end up with literally thousands of messages in their inbox.
Yep.
And I'm not talking single digit thousands. I'm talking like double digits. I think I may have even seen triple digit thousands. So like 100,000 messages in an inbox, and it just piles up. Actually, if people want to chat in Zoom or put in the Facebook, how many messages are in your inbox right now? I'd love to hear it.
Wow.
Or see it. So, and hey, it's a safe place. Just the whole world's going to see your number. No worries. But the way to do that is to actually process your email. So that's the vernacular change. Instead of check email, we're going to process email. It's going to be very conscious at specific times in the day, and you're going to go through all of them beginning to end. In fact, if you want a neat little trick, I suggest that you sort your email inbox by oldest date first. So likely your inbox is sorted by the newest one. The newest one comes up, and you know what? We get that dopamine hit. Yeah. Great. It's bold. I want to go answer that, see what's going on. Bing, bing. It's like a drug addiction, honestly. It's the same part of our brain that likes to process email that gets addicted to whatever.
Interesting.
So if you can break it up into specific segments, and we could talk more about how to do that, that's not what number one way you're going to just stay on top of your email situation. Okay. I may not have actually answered your question, Joanne, but that's you got me going on that email.
Yeah. And then if we have multiple emails at this point, we've got our work emails, we've got our personal emails, we may be part of organizations that have emails. How do we, manage that time between all the different areas where we're getting emails? Because when we're being in sort of a work from home situation now gives us the flexibility, because I remember when I was working in an office situation, I never really looked at the other emails I had except for, the company that I was working with at the time. And then other emails would get attention, at the end of the workday. But now that a lot of people are working from home, I have that flexibility to check everything, but I do feel like I get very, spread out and distracted. So how do we prioritize?
Well, I have multiple email addresses as well, and they all go to one place. So I'm not looking at multiple places. I'm looking at one place, and I'm processing one place. It's not, for me, it's not necessarily trying to shift hats, because the hat I'm wearing at the time is process email. And when I do that, it may be, personal email. I had some electrical work done yesterday, and the contractor wants to know something as a follow-up. That's in the same email as, hey, we need to get better at XYZ if we're really going to deliver this project on time in the world of business. So it's a flow. And hey, those things blend, and I'm okay with that personally. You don't have to be, not everyone is. Blending your business life and your personal life, it's, for me, just makes more sense to think of my whole life. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Definitely. So how do you think leaders can really best protect their time outside of emails, just in general? Because there are a lot of asks. I also feel that what's happened over the last, I don't know, I would say 5 to 7 years, I have found that companies really ask people to do way more than they're capable of. And I've managed teams where they feel incredibly overwhelmed, and I've had to talk to them about prioritization and then decide what's on the bottom of the list and what you're going to let go, because you cannot possibly get to everything that a company is asking us to do. And there are going to be things that we have to let go. And I'm not crazy about that sort of business model, but I feel like I've seen it across the board at most companies. So we've got all these leaders with so many requests, and how can they really protect their time?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the book, I outline 5 steps to do that. So, and just to give you a little bit more background or context on that, I interviewed C-level executives around the US and asked them simply that question: how do you evaluate requests for your time? Because yeah, hey, we all get way more requests than we could ever potentially process. And you're hitting on one of those 5 key steps, Joanne, which is priority. Because let's think about it this way. I'm going to guess your listeners that regarding your listeners, that their plate is already full. Would that be a fair assessment, do you think, of the people that are listening to this? Their plate is pretty full. So great. So that means if something new comes in, it's really a question of reprioritizing, not prioritizing, because we already have a clear list. When I led global software development teams at Fidelity, the most effective leaders that worked for me were the ones that when I brought a new project to them and said, hey, can you take on this project or initiative? They would say, happy to do that, Don. Could you just tell me where on my priority list that fits? Right. And then, hey, they were pretty effective because they were managing me a bit, not to just keep overloading their plate. And then together we would sit and say, you know what, this really isn't a priority. Skip it. Or you know what, I think this needs to be number 2 and everything else needs to shift down. So that's really one way to protect your time. The other, and really in order to do that, let's come back to really one of the most important ways that these C-level executives use to protect their time, which is to make sure it aligns with your roadmap.
Okay.
So we all need a roadmap. And what's a roadmap? If I was saying, okay, we're going to drive from New York to San Francisco, we'd pull out a map, right? I don't know, probably not an old-fashioned map like we know that you used to fold and have in the car, or it's going to be on the computer, but it's still going to be pretty clear route of where you need to go. You're probably also going to plan some stops along the way, and you're going to plan some, how are you going to chunk this? Maybe you know someone halfway across the country that you want to spend a couple more days with, and you're going to plan that. So all of these points and approaches on your roadmap, I would think of them as goals, right? Your goals are going to be on your roadmap. And when those are all clearly laid out based on resources and time, then the request that comes in, is this supporting my roadmap, or is this taking me on a detour of some way that's going to end up taking me longer to get everything done? So that's another important way to protect your time.
Okay. I've definitely had my map go haywire when you're working on a project and then all of a sudden someone asks you to check in with 5 different teams to get their approval before you can move forward with the project you're working on. So definitely seen things get hijacked a bit. So I would love to know from you, why is this topic so fascinating to you?
For me personally, I've been fascinated with this topic of being productive and getting more done with your time for like over 30 years. And it's because I believe it's part of what led me to a successful career. So I attended a webinar, or not a webinar, this is before webinars, actually, a seminar back in 1989. I was 4 at the time when productivity guru David Allen, some of you may recognize that name, he wrote a cool book called Getting Things Done. And this was even 11 years before he wrote the book. And he ran the seminar. It was a 2-day seminar. And I remember leaving the seminar on a Friday afternoon and getting back to my desk. And getting all of my whole world just in order. So that meant, clearing the desk. I think the only thing left on my desk after I was done with that was my keyboard and a picture of my wife, and that was it. And then and everything was filed, everything was actionable, everything was really clear. So that just really led me on a desire to learn even more about this. So, one of those shelves in the back there on my bookshelf, one of those, that whole shelf is dedicated to productivity books. So I just eat this stuff up because I think it helps me grow and be better.
Amazing. So talking about that, excuse me, you said you've got a whole shelf of productivity books behind you, and
Yes.
you have a book coming out on this topic. And there are a lot of productivity books out there. So in your opinion, do you think we really need another one?
Probably not. Probably not. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. Many of the books out there already, which, I've learned a lot from them, and I don't take anything away from any of them. They're all great books. Think about this as an addition to that, as opposed to replacing. But what they teach us is how to manage the stuff already on our plate. What I saw as a gap, especially when I spoke to these C-level executives, and I did some research in that space, is there's nothing really that talks about how do we evaluate that request when it first comes in. Think about it like as a triage in healthcare, right? How are we going to determine exactly what's going on and what's needed? So what I discovered is that gap is really there, and that people in general don't like to say no. Executives, and it varies based on the level, but people don't like to say no. They want to say yes. So now we just have to figure out when to say yes. And by default, that makes it easier to, identify when to say no.
Great. Yes, that's a big problem that people have, is saying no and feeling bad about it and taking on too much, and then overgiving, and then feeling frustrated that they're overgiving. So that is a great skill set to have, of knowing when to say yes. So how can people get your book? When can they get your book? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's going to be ready for pre-order sometime in early to mid-August. It's coming out September 14th. So if you want to get looped in, go to When to Say Yes. Actually, right now, go to donkhouri.com. So maybe we can actually chat this. donkhouri.com/book. donkhouri.com/book. And that will get you directly to our email list. And on the email list, you'll hear everything that's going. Like, we just finalized the cover of the book, and so we're going to make an announcement in that email list about the cover and what it looks like. And it's fun. Awesome. It's a fun process.
I will put that in our chat. I put it in the comments on Facebook, but I will put that in our chat in a moment.
Oh, great.
So we are going to be wrapping up the Facebook Live portion, and we're going to head on over to the Opera Dolce in the Leadership Lounge, so that Don and I can do some Q&A around this topic and do some live hot seat coaching. So just to let everyone out there know that the next Leadership Dolce Sweet Morsels of Wisdom will be Monday, June 21st at 12:30 p.m. We are going to stick with our lunch hour on Eastern time, and I'm going to be teaching you how to squash self-serving coworkers so that you can sparkle. And if you have a VIP ticket, I'm going to be doing some hot seat coaching after I talk about this topic. So bring all your coworker challenges, because this is going to be a really juicy one.
Sounds interesting. That sounds really interesting, Joanne.
Thanks, everyone. And I will see you all on June 21st.